morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. Thank you for being here. My name is Darcy Beckett, also known as Inspector Bark. Today, we are going to be talking about a great topic that I think you will find very interesting. Today's show is episode 4, season 1. The topic of conversation today will be about chain of command. Can you show the slide, please, for me, Jenny? Thanks. Chain of evidence and chain of custody equals a chance of successful prosecution for animal abusers, hoarders, and dogfighting rings. It is sponsored by Picture a Moment Pet Productions. So I thank you so much. Our producer, Kathy, is out for the day, and her assistant, Jenny, will be showing the screens as we ask to see them. Today, I also want to make an announcement that unfortunately, Sheriff Wayne Ivey from Brevard County, his lovely assistant, called me on Monday to tell me that he had to go out of town unexpectedly. Sheriff Wayne Ivey will not be on the show today, ladies and gentlemen, but he has rescheduled. We are in the process of rescheduling for a later program. Keep in mind, we air every other Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Please check your local listings for your time frame. We're going to be probably on today for a good hour and a half. And today I'm going to welcome my two other guests. Number one is William Copeland. He is the director and founder of All Dogs Come From Heaven, located out of Cincinnati, Ohio. There you see William on his beautiful balcony. And then you also have Lisa Rabanis, who is legal counsel, former prosecutor, and also she is a criminal defense attorney and an animal advocate attorney. So welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for being on the Inspector Bark Show. Thank you both.
Hello. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I want to thank both of you. I have met Lisa personally here in my state in Georgia when Lisa came with a girlfriend of hers to come to a conference. Animal Law Source puts the conference on every year. And this year it was down in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is really only about a half hour from my home. And Lisa attended the conference and we had dinner. I love talking to people like William. I love having conversations with Lisa. These are two people that I believe are true animal advocates, and they want to make a change for the lives of these animals for the better. We are seeing more and more cases come up where these so-called nonprofit 501c3s, I believe, are using the backs of animals to profit off of. We're going to concentrate today mainly on dog and cat animal abuse, animal neglect. I do want to let you all know that I put a call into the IRS non-exempt telephone number this morning. Don't try calling on a Monday because a recording comes on. I was fortunate enough to only hold for maybe 12 minutes, spoke to a lovely agent, and we spoke about the fact that it is getting out of hand. Nonprofit 501c3s that are using the backs of these animals, I believe, for their own personal financial gain. How do we stop them? With the help of the public, and I stress the help of the public, that's you listening to this podcast, to simply file a complaint with the IRS. It is so easy, people. You just go to website irs.gov, you go to the charities and nonprofit tab. There's a form, which is form number 13909. Yes, I just looked at my notes. Form 13909. And you can file that complaint anonymously. You can mail it in. You can email it in. But we need to stop these people from using and abusing the animals for their own personal financial gain. On that note, I want to I'll address this first question to you, Lisa. Being the attorney based in the state of Ohio, you are licensed in the state of Ohio, and thank you again for coming on the show. What is it that you're seeing as a former prosecutor with cases that you have seen throughout the country, not just in the state of Ohio? What is your understanding of the punishment that these perpetrators are getting or not getting?
Well, throughout the country, the amount or the difference from state to state for the punishment is pretty amazing. In many states, and most states, we'll just say, the punishment is far too small. and it's not severe enough. It doesn't make anyone think twice about doing what they're doing, obviously, which is why I think we have such a perpetual increase of what's going on right now. But from state to state, there is quite a difference. And for some states, the felony cruelty or felony abuse neglect charges are starting to have a bigger potential for prison sentences. Here in Ohio, though, the felony prohibitions against concerning companion animals, is only a felony 5, which is the lowest level felony in Ohio, and it's only 6 to 12 months. So it's nothing, so you cause serious physical harm or kill a dog. And that's basically the most you can get would be a year in prison. And the presumption in Ohio on a felony 5 is probation. So
probation.
Yeah.
Probation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What state, Lisa, do you feel is maybe the most aggressive when it comes to punishing these animal abusers in dog fighting operations?
I don't know if I know a state offhand that's more, but the further west and north you go, generally, the better the statutes and the more progressive they're getting. If you're in the Midwest and go into the South, the less punishment you're going to get. And so, no surprise, the more problems we're seeing generally is in the Midwest and the South.
And I can attest to that because I'm here in Georgia. I lived in South Florida for many, many years, and we see a lot of it. And we'll talk about Kentucky, Paducah, Kentucky, in a second. But I want to bring on William. And William is from All Dogs Come From Heaven. I believe that, Lisa, you are on William's board. Are you not?
I am, correct. And I'm legal counsel for the rescue as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. William, tell us a little bit about your background, if you will, and how you became involved in what you do and the cases that you yourself have been boots on the ground.
Okay. The reality is, by the way, let's not forget that Lisa is also boots on the ground with many of these operations herself. She's legal counsel, yes, but she also gets her hands dirty in there actually doing the work. That's not new. She's done that from day one. I just don't want to sell her short. Now, we've been doing cases before I took over the rescue and since the rescue. And we can go back to Fairfield, we can go to Bethel, we can go to Trixie Foundation, we can go to Montgomery County. I mean, there are many, many things that we do. And a lot of those are also things such as disaster relief. But my point is that what we've learned in doing this is we've grown as an organization and brought in the right people has allowed us to realize that the only way for this to ever work properly is legislative change and effective prosecution. Now, Lisa can speak more to effective prosecution requirements than I can. I may be the one on the ground doing the evidence capturing, but she's the one who can look at it from a prosecutor's point of view. And that's a point of view that you must respect because that's the one you have to prove out. If you cannot convince a prosecutor to pursue a case, it will simply die out. And as an example, I'll say something very simplistic. Why do we have murderers go to jail? It's a deterrent. And that's exactly what this is as well. We need to deter the behavior by having legitimate, real-world sentencing. The Bethel case, 18 months in jail. And they can't have another animal for 5 years after they get out of jail.
William, not to interrupt you. William, tell the audience what you mean by the Bethel case. Explain what the Bethel case is. Is this the one where we had the slides, or is this another case?
This is the one where we had 21 German Shepherds in a basement. Most of them in cages that were so small that they could not stand up vertically. And many of them walked out of there eventually with their heads hung sideways because that's how their heads had been for such a long period of time. They could not bring them up forward. And we had 2 horses that were literally on a porch, a front porch, fenced in. and had been there for years. We had 4 more horses. And I mean, these are horrific cases, okay? But the thing that's most important about it, in this particular case, we had good evidence, good custody control, and we absolutely got good prosecution. And that's why they went to jail for 18 months. And again, a 5-year prohibition on owning any creature after they get out of jail. Or they automatically go back to jail for 5 more years.
How much more jail time do they have, William?
They're sitting on another 10 months right now.
Okay, so this is recent. Okay, Lisa, are you familiar with this case that William's talking about?
Yeah, I was on the ground for one of the days. I think it was 2 or 3 days of processing. I was in for the second day, and yeah, it was a husband-wife couple who we found out about the case through. Actually, the husband had a health incident, and so 911 was called. And when the paramedics got to the house, they were so disturbed by what they smelled and saw that they called in the local animal control, and then animal control called us and some other local rescues to assist them. So we went in and assisted. There were 2 dead animals, 2 dead dogs in the basement, and then the rest were safely secured. And the ones we, because they all got divvied up, basically there were too many for one rescue or one shelter to handle. So there was a horse thing that handled the horses, and then the dogs were divvied up between the rescues. And at least the ones we kept, they were all adopted out successfully. But I think of importance is, I think also the wife was a psychiatrist, and with obviously a hoarding issue. I mean, there were a bunch of cats as well. I forgot to talk about the cats, and maybe ferrets.
Yes.
We dealt with primarily with the dogs, because that's what we do. But anyway, while they were out on bond, they were told not to have animals. And one of the persons associated with us found out they had animals during that pendency of the case, and we informed the court, and the court was not pleased. And once they found that out, I believe their bond was revoked and they were put in jail at that time. And then once they got their sentence, they got the book thrown at them. So I think part of their sentence was not only just the gravity of the charges and the seriousness of the charges, but the fact that the judge was mad at them because they didn't do what he told them to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, William, I remember you telling me about this case because, folks, it doesn't matter what profession you are. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. These people have an illness, which is hoarding. And William and I talked about this the other day. William, and maybe for the next show, we will find that reputable psychiatrist that we can talk about hoarding of animals. It is a mental illness. It disturbs me greatly that you're going to use innocent animals. We're seeing it over and over again. Look what we're seeing in Paducah, Kentucky. And let me touch on Paducah, Kentucky, people. This guy's name is David Howery, Howery. 2009, he was arrested for 296 counts of animal cruelty. 296 counts of animal cruelty. Just got busted 2 months ago in Paducah, Kentucky, where there were so many complaints, and sometimes, unfortunately, we see it all over the country. Local officials turn a blind eye, state and even federal turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to this. They don't want to deal with it. And until we raise the noise level and power in numbers, we can make a difference for those animals. We have to be their voice, people. They cannot speak for themselves. When the police went on to the property in Paducah, Kentucky, there were dogs, there were cats, all these other animals as well. And these dogs were living in horrific, horrific conditions. All that information is on the Facebook page, The Bad and the Ugly in the World of Pets. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And Jenny, you don't have to show that just yet. We'll go to those pages in a minute. What disturbs me greatly with this case is he is in an interview with the detectives, and he tells the detectives that a rescue located out of Long Island, New York, by the name of Rough House Rescue, that's spelled RUFF, House Rescue, based in Long Island, was pulling dogs and still continue to pull dogs out of the Rio Grande Valley, Texas area, where there's several dogs, and I'm going to say probably over 150, living out in the element in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. That is close to the Mexican border. Imagine how hot it is. These dogs live out in the element. The founder of Rough House Rescue's name is Diane Eldocado. She goes by the name Diane Rose on Facebook. She is being exposed big time by ex-volunteers that have come forward. What these people will do, we see a pattern, is that they'll try and discredit those speaking the truth. Those speaking the truth, like myself and like so many others, are labeled crazy. Oh, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. They'll intimidate, they'll bully, they'll harass. These are the common traits we're seeing with these people because they want you to shut up. They'll use donation dollars meant for the dogs on frivolous cease and desist letters, okay? And Lisa, I'll ask you in a second about the cease and desist letter. To me, that is just a means of trying to shut you up, scare you, and the general public do get scared. But my attorneys that I consult with, they've told me, Darcy, it's just toilet paper. And I will not be silenced, okay? And I don't want all of you that are watching to be silenced because power in numbers. And this is where I hope to God that the chain of command, the chain of evidence, the proper documentation, as Lisa and William both talked about, will hold in Paducah, Kentucky. And I want them, and they're doing a good job, the detectives are doing a damn good job, to link the person that funneled the money to let this man continue to do this to these animals. I mean, some of these animals couldn't even stand up. They were in such need of medical attention. Where is the punishment, people? Where is the responsibility? I want to hold Diane Eldocado, the founder of Rough House Rescue, responsible. She needs to be shut down. Those poor animals in the Rio Grande Valley need to be rescued. Okay, and then you have opposition. And William and Lisa, I'm sure you can agree with me. There will always be opposition. Just like Charles Manson, Helter Skelter, right? He had fans, he had followers all up until his death. Scott Peterson, the case with Lacey Peterson and the baby, unborn baby. He had marriage proposals. So there's always opposition. And there's people that will continue to believe what they're told because they don't do their own homework. But when it comes to the chain of evidence, I know I've only been on boots on the ground once, and that was on January 6, 2019. We had a German Shepherd incident down in South Georgia. Numerous complaints went to the Georgia Department of Ag, Companion Animal Equine Division. Complaints went ignored. Even the parents of this hoarder, and her trial's coming up. Her name is Angela Belinda Powell. She's out of Montgomery County, Georgia. She had all these German Shepherds living out in the element, no cover, nothing, in cow pens. And a whistleblower had to go beyond the local, beyond the state, and contacted Guardians of Rescue in New York. That whistleblower's name is Clint Brady. Good guy. I met him. I met him that day, that Sunday on January 6th. I drove down there with Victoria Stillwell, who, if everybody knows Victoria, she looks a lot like you, Lisa. She's got the long brown hair, and she does all about positive behavior training. She's excellent. She was in the car with me, along with Claudine Wilkins, the founder of Animal Law Source, and a canine operator. He and I were the only two in that vehicle that were new to what we were going to witness. I stayed back. I brought refreshments and stuff for the volunteers. But unfortunately, there was a new person that was on deck for the Guardians of Rescue. There was no documentation. There was no pictures taken. Each German Shepherd that came out, there was a veterinarian, okay, vaccinating and all that. But I know what occurred in the 20-mile away county, Candler County, Sheriff John Miles was invited to come on this show. And unfortunately, I didn't hear back from him, but I'm going to still pursue him. He was excellent because what Angela Belinda Powell did is she moved, I think, 147 of the dogs to Candler County, 20 miles away, in the woods. She bought land and they were living in the woods in these cow pens. People started hearing all these dogs barking. Quiet little place called Metter, Georgia. The motto is better in Metter. And they started talking among themselves. And we're hearing all these dogs. Well, fortunately for the animals, they trespassed. And they went on with a golf cart. And they saw something that was horrific. They saw dogs eating another dog to stay alive. When they called the sheriff's department, Candler County, Sheriff John Miles, his deputy went on with a body cam. And you see this Angela Belinda Powell talking to the deputy in her own words saying, this is their sanctuary. Sanctuary. You call that a sanctuary when the dogs have to eat each other and kill each other to stay alive? However, he took it in his own hands, Sheriff John Miles, and he brought in Atlanta Humane Society. And that person that was in charge is Jessica Rock, who's now our state prosecutor for animal abuse cases. They documented everything over there. They set up tents. They took pictures. And that's where I want to talk about to you, William, and to you, Lisa. But William, I'm going to address this first. When you are on a scene, you're first to step onto the ground. I always think, and we talked about this, treat it like a crime scene. So tell me, take it from here, William, what exactly do you do? And hopefully we can share what documentation, if we can get that up on the screen as you discuss the necessary steps in making sure we get the correct prosecution. Jenny, do we have the slides of his checklist? If we don't have that, that's fine. But this is going to be about another case. There you go. Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you. William, tell us, and Lisa, you interject. What happens when you arrive onto a crime scene, as we're going to call it?
Well, it is a crime scene. We're not just calling it is. It is. Particularly any of the larger cases. But if there's one thing you have to learn in this, is you treat it, if it's one dog or 1,000, you treat them exactly the same so that you can operate exactly the same for each one. And you do not forget something. That's critically important. Every one is equally important in the way that you process. I'll give you an example in one operation. I really don't, I don't have the leniency to put a name to it, okay? You have Team 1. Team 1 is an armed and assessment team. They go in first and they assess the situation, get a basic look at the animals, location, ground logistics, everything else. Particularly if it's a large site, that's critically important. Then you have Team 2, which is a capture team. And that team is the one that goes and does the extraction of the animals, either by works very smoothly or if you actually have to set traps and capture. Team 3 is medical assessment and triage if there's active wound issues. Those people are obviously vets, registered vet techs. They have all the medical equipment necessary. They have access to our ambulance. We have our own animal ambulance. So they need to do something more invasive, they can. But what you do is you go, and that's where you do the documentation. Documents you were wanting to show, that's when you do it. Those documents are critical at that moment because that is the first evidence capture. That's a first point of evidence. And if it's not, it's like a house. If the foundation is bad, the case will be bad. Mm-hmm. You must do these things. And you have to use nationally recognized methodologies for doing so.
William, we've got on the screen, you may not be able to see it because you are distant from your computer. Scroll back up, if you will, Jenny, where it states, and you've got your sheet right there in front of you. Thank you. Code 3, it says canine physical exam report. So would that be Team 1 that would first capture the first?
No, that would be Team 3. That would be because you have to have a veterinarian or a registered vet tech.
Okay.
Because by law, you need to have, or you prefer to have, I should say, what is considered an expert witness.
Okay.
And a veterinarian or even an RVT, state is considered an expert witness. So their testimony and what they have filled out will not be questioned. So no, they have to be the one to do this. Now, we can do additional documentation such as body cam videos, which we always do, photographic evidence of other forms, audio as well. But these documents are the ones that really, in the end, are the basis for justification of what we're doing. We're taking these dogs, and this is why.
William, the first one that we see here is the canine physical exam report. Do you want us to talk about that report first, or which one do you want Jenny to show up on the screen?
No, actually, page 2, which is the pet tech snout to tail worksheet.
Okay, let us get to that first. Okay, we're right there. Thank you so much. Talk about that if you will, or do you want Lisa to talk about this?
I'll cover this part, and then I'll probably step off to Lisa after this. If you'll note down the left-hand side, it says week/day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and the reason being is you're trying to document the transition of the animal. Okay, but you see down below there are these images. Mm-hmm. That's where you document either wounds or low weight or broken leg, anything of that type. Now, in addition to this, which is not included in this because it's a secondary operation, then you also do fecal, testing for parasitics. Okay, and then if you go to the next page, though, which is a custody care record, this is absolutely critical. Okay, and you have one for each and every animal with their name at the top.
Wait, William, I think we're on the wrong one. What does it say at the top that you want us to look at?
Custody care record.
Okay, custody care record. We're getting to it.
Okay.
Thank you. Custody care record. No, keep going back up, Jenny. Thank you. Maybe this.
No, it's actually below that. It's actually below it.
Okay, we may not have captured that.
Okay.
It's okay. You go ahead. You tell us what you've got there.
Yeah. Well, here. Just go back to live.
It's okay, William. It's too far from it's okay. Tell us basically the first team. Now, the first team, I want to go back to the first team. They're the ones that enter into the, I know what I saw on that January 6, 2019. There were clusters of German Shepherds in each cow pen, let's say 10. And they'd go in and they'd take one dog out. And it was so sad. And I was standing with the veterinarian. They all would yell, all the German Shepherds, because they were scared. They had no social interaction. So now a person comes in, takes and uses that device. And once they captured that German Shepherd, all of them would scream stop hurting our friend. And I asked the vet that, and they sense it. So from that moment on, once they get that dog, pictures are immediately taken. What is the process?
Yeah, what will happen is, Lisa, if you don't mind, I'll use a specific example that you can speak to as well. Lisa and I were going through a house in Grundy County, Tennessee. Now, this is one of the most horrific ones I've ever seen. And for me, that's quite a statement. Okay. And but Lisa and I were going through the house. We were the beginning, team one. And you hear a little yell. And then you look over, you find 2 cardboard boxes. You remove the top cardboard box. You open the one underneath it, and you find a mom with tiny puppies inside the cardboard box. Okay. So at that point, that's what team 1 does. It finds where are the problems. Where do we need to focus our attention? What is critically important and what may potentially be dangerous? In this particular case, by the end of the operation, we literally had to call the fire department to bring us oxygen tanks so we could do rebreathing on site. Because one of the deputy sheriffs had to go into the hospital because he was only wearing a regular mask and it was not sufficient to protect him. So what I'm getting at, we do that part. Second team, though many of us will cross over, of course, then we go and do the removal of animals, whether it's by seizure or extraction. And sometimes it's quite peaceful, sometimes it is not. But we have to do that. And they get taken then to a tent that is set up. And all the data will be processed that way. Photographs will be taken of every animal, body assessment reports done on every animal, signed off by either a registered vet tech or a veterinarian. And that begins a chain of evidence, and it begins a chain of custody at that point. Because, I mean, yes, the chain of evidence is critically important, but chain of custody is important as well. But I'll let Lisa speak to that more as a prosecutor, because obviously her experience is greater than mine.
Okay. Yeah, great. Lisa?
Yeah.
As a former prosecutor, tell us, as where William left off, what do you do if you were the prosecutor? You look at all the evidence. Walk us through those steps, if you will.
Well, I mean, and let me just touch on what William said. This isn't a perfect world where you have enough people and you have enough time and it lays out, but that may not happen where you can divide it up into teams and you have, everything going the way you want it to. Like in Grundy, we thought there were 60 dogs and there ended up being roughly 200. So you bring in people for a certain amount and then you have more. And then you only have people who are volunteered, especially the vets. Vets will come in for a certain amount of time and then you lose them. So in a perfect world, these checklists that we have and want done, a lot of times they aren't done to the degree of specificity that a prosecutor would want or like. But you need to have something that basically, as soon as a dog is taken, a dog gets collared or some way identified with a number. So then the number on the dog is then correlated with the report. And then the vet and the vet tech do whatever assessment they do, as specific or as non-specific as it might be. And from there, the dogs are then taken to, caged and then taken to whatever place they need to go. And then there's a vet who's going to do a further assessment when we have actual time. So you have vet records there, but there's going to be pictures on site and video on site. There's pictures of the dogs. I like to get what's called a body assessment. So you have a picture above, on the side, and the face. That's the best, I think. And then, of course, if there's any specific injuries, you want to get a picture of that. And like I said, that's in a perfect world if you're at the scene and it's crazy. But if not at the scene, then you want to get it as close to time as possible from that. And then, obviously, as far as chain of custody goes, whoever has the animal, because obviously an animal is a different type of evidence than most other evidence in a criminal case. Most other evidence isn't walking and breathing. It's drugs, it's guns, it's an inanimate object that doesn't necessarily change. So when a status of this evidence is in a changing thing, you need to keep track of that changing. And as long as you have that animal, you are the steward of that animal, and that animal is evidence. That animal cannot be treated as a regular animal that can be adopted out, because if you lose the case, the person who had the animal can get it back. And so that's one of the huge problems with getting people and rescues involved in these, especially when they're criminal cases. It's easier to get them when you have them, when you know they're going to be surrendered up front, because then you can do what you want to with the animals and you can turn them around and you can adopt them out and you don't lose a bunch of money. But if it's an evidentiary case, if it's a criminal case, there's no knowledge as to how long a case is going to take, and you have to keep the animal as long as the case requires. And depending on the state, you are not probably going to get repaid for the money that you put into these animals for lack of a better term, boarding them. And so, unfortunately, but you are responsible from the time you have them until the case to keep track of anything you do with them or to them. And you also have to get permission from the court for anything other than normal run-of-the-mill stuff. You can't adjust this dog in any way, shape, or form. If you feel as though there's some type of surgery that has to be done, you have to have the court's approval. You can't spay or neuter this animal, even though you think it's in the best interest and it should be done. You can't do that. You can't do anything to this animal. Basically, better safe than sorry. You better ask the prosecutor, and the prosecutor can give you clearance, or the judge will, and the prosecutor will go to the judge for anything. Whether it's putting the dog down, whether it's doing any kind of surgery that you feel is necessary. You can't go by the vet. You have to go by the court at this point, because that's what controls.
I want to touch on something that you have me somewhat concerned, because we had a case happen right before Memorial Day down in South Florida, where I came from, Broward County, May 24th or 25th. This particular incident is involving cats. This particular so-called 501c3, Love is Feral, the one person, there were three people involved. The one woman named Michelin Joy on Facebook, her real name is Michelin Toulouse. She was going around trapping cats, okay, capturing cats. They thought she was the ultimate, hero. Everybody loved her. She was even apparently evicted from her apartment, and she was staying at a rescues shelter in Broward County, west of Sunrise Boulevard and 95. That's not a great area. So she was living there, but she was evicted from her apartment. Remember that. Well, they caught her apparently stealing money out of their drawer, and along with her boyfriend, who had a rap sheet a mile long. And they decided to call the police. But what they also did is they decided to go to the apartment where she was already evicted from. Think about that. And what they found, and I really should have Jenny run that video, was horrific. An abandoned apartment in Sunrise, Florida, which is west of Fort Lauderdale, and covered in cat feces everywhere. And the strong cats, what were they doing to stay alive? They were killing the weaker, and they were eating the dead cats. So this particular one individual, who happened to be the partner of this Michelin Joy, her name is Jessica Del Coto, and her other partner, Cassandra Lee D, I believe one was the money maker. The fundraisers would come up left and right. We've got all the proof. And after I finish this story, then I'm going to have Jenny show the different pages that I want people to like. And then we'll go on to William's presentation. So you see this video, and it's horrific to watch. These poor cats are scared. So basically, they were collecting all this money for these cats. Some of them, they showed vet bills, very small amount. And these poor cats were living in horrific conditions. Complaints prior had been lodged to the local jurisdiction and fell upon deaf ears. Neighbors complained of the smell, because that's the first dead giveaway, you guys, is the smell. Yeah. Dead giveaway, and the ammonia levels. So they go in, these people that run this rescue, what did they do? I believe they disrupted a crime scene, okay? Should have been taped off. They take and they disseminate these cats into different places. Tri-County Humane Society up in Boca Raton, Florida. They took 7 or 8 cats. And I'm thinking, these cats are evidence. Now, the ones that were found dead, they took them for a necropsy report, Lisa.
Right.
But what aggravates me is I believe that this girl is going to walk off free. Now, within 48 hours, I believe, within 48 hours to 72 hours, they did find her and they did arrest her in an adjoining town called Lauderhill, Florida. She was with her thug boyfriend, because that's what he is. And they were arrested for criminal mischief. Okay.
Yeah.
Now she went to jail. She got bonded out. Okay. We got all that. And I'll show that. I'll show the slides in a minute, Jenny, if you can get those 4 pages up. But what infuriates me is it wasn't treated like a crime scene. I spoke to the detective in charge for the Sunrise Police Department. Their main person who does animal abuse was on a big case with cows that were moved up from Miami-Dade from a repeat animal abuser. So they moved from place to place to place. He moved from Miami-Dade up to Broward, and all these cows apparently malnourished and what have you. Do I think we have a case against Michelin Joy? And they're targeting her because the other 2 are doing the backstroke and saying, oh, we had no clue. Yeah. The love of money is the root of all evil.
Right. Okay?
And then just answer that question. Do we even have a case here?
I mean, they might be okay because since she was evicted, I mean, what they should have done is get permission from the landlord to go in. And as long as they got permission from the landlord, then they're fine. The issue then is going to be, well, I mean, she's going to try to say, oh, that wasn't like that when I left. I don't know what happened after I left. I don't know the time span between when she left and when they found the cats and the situation. But generally what you're supposed to do and what we're finding also is, unfortunately, a lot of time these dog wardens, animal control officers aren't law enforcement officers, don't have much training, don't know what they're allowed to do, don't know what they're supposed to do, don't coordinate a lot of times with police, and police then in turn don't want to deal with animal cases. That's not what I'm here for. That's beneath me. And so you have this disconnect, unfortunately. But the dog wardens, they should, if you're going to go into a place, you have to have a search warrant. You have to have probable cause, and that there should be enough probable cause to get that, and then you go in. With her being evicted, she doesn't really have standing to challenge the search of an apartment that she was evicted from. So I think it should be okay in the grand scheme of everything. But the fact that they didn't preserve the cats, because then you have to say, and I don't know if she was charged, but, a charge per cat. And then you have to know the assessment of the cats at the time and whether or not they improved, or whether or not they, with cats, if they had leukemia and that's just how they were sick when I got them. I mean, that's another thing as far as you want to get a part of the search warrant or part of the things you do in your investigation with any of these groups is getting their records, because a lot of times they're just going to say, oh, I'm a good Samaritan. I was helping and I just got this animal and he was on death's door when I got him. So he's even better now than I got him, or this is just how he was, and so it's not my fault. He looks horrible. I got him horrible. So that's not my fault, and so.
Lisa, she hasn't been charged yet. There was a hearing last week because she's wanting her 3 dogs, two dogs or 3 dogs that were staying at the shelter where she was living. She was living at this shelter. So I'm telling you, these people that say, oh, well, we had no clue. They were all involved. We see the fundraisers. We see whose names are involved. And what upsets me is that these cats have gone elsewhere. Sharon Carmichael is a great animal control officer. She's with the Marty Huizinga Humane Society. They're on Griffin Road, right near Fort Lauderdale Airport. She's been with them for 34, 35 years. Until they cut the budget, she would go out into the community. If there were complaints, she would be the one. Now she's in-house because, of course, their budget. But, I mean, she tells me exactly what William's telling me. They secure the crime scene. And if there's too many animals, like we have and I'll touch lightly on this, with the Trixie Foundation, then they bring all the equipment there and set up outside of the perimeter of where the crime scene is. But all these cats and dogs are evidence. So why would you send 8 of them here and 5 here? And it's like you're stamping on the crime scene and you're ruining it. But with that, just hold that thought, Lisa, if you have something. I'm going to ask Jenny to pull up one by one, and I'll address each one about the fantastic Facebook pages that these people need to really follow and like. The first one, Jenny, if you could put up. These are Facebook pages. Thank you. That is a Facebook page, everybody. And that is Guard Dog USA exposing pet flippers, bad rescues, abusers, breeders, etc. They're easy to find. You just type in Guard Dog USA. You'll find them on Facebook. They are a great group of women and men that are trying to make a difference for these animals and exposing those that are using and abusing the animals. Next slide, please. That is a page that has now over 12,000 followers, the bad and the ugly in the world of pets. Yes, I am one of the primary admins on that page. There are others. We needed others to join the fight, especially after this May 24th episode with Love is Feral. All you have to do, folks, is on the bad and the ugly, you just go to the little magnifying glass and type in a topic. Type in Rough House Rescue. Type in Trixie Foundation. We've done stories, and that page has been around for probably over 12 years. So please give it a like, both of them. The next slide, please. This is great. This is animalvictory.org. They are a great group of women, Janelle and Penny. They are very transparent, even though they are a profit company. They have a real hard job in front of them. Every animal abuse case that they find in this country, they want a petition signed to help give the proper prosecution. Lisa, if you don't know about this particular site, they are animalvictory.org on Facebook as well as on the web. Fantastic, fantastic group of animal advocates, activists, and lovers. Next slide, please. And that's my page. That's Inspector Bark, sniffing out the best in canine care and the worst. Unfortunately, people, I'm getting a lot of the worst situations. I'm working right now on a brochure. I don't know, Jenny, if you're able to show the brochure, because what I'm doing now is I want to reach out to animal welfare organizations, companies that manufacture dog and cat food. I've got a brochure. Thank you so much. That's the first page. If you just scroll up close, and we will get that on. Thank you so much. That will be on the, I love this because this stops right there, if you will, Jenny. That cuts off. That is a brochure. And you can see the dog is sniffing, right? So then you turn the page and it talks about our mission. And that's Inspector Bark seeks to maximize public awareness of unethical practices within the animal welfare industry with a focus on canine care. So my goal is, as a private investigator who owns her own detective agency here, is to get the word out to wonderful organizations that give back to these rescue organizations. But are they giving back to the reputable ones?
Right.
Here's monthly sponsorship. We need your help. I need your help, people. I cannot do this alone, and I cannot continue to dig in my own pocket to fund what we need to do. It takes a lot of work. It takes requesting public records, doing a deep dive into these individuals that say that they're rescuing animals. So I am looking for sponsorship. And really, in all honesty, if you want to become a sponsor, thank you so much. You can be an individual dog lover like listed here. You can be a Chihuahua for $15 a month or go right up to a Great Dane. This helps my efforts, and it helps those that also, like me, do it on our own time and dime. That is my Ricky. He's my blonde. That's my Lucy. That picture is about 4 years old. She's gotten a little bit more gray, my girl. She's almost 13. And my Ricky, they're just great. And I just love them so much. Thank you so much, Jenny, for showing that. With that being said, we will make a difference. And that brochure, along with a welcoming letter to animal organizations, whether it's Chewy.com, whether it's Blue Buffalo, whether it's, Tito's Vodka, he gives a lot back to the community, but they don't do a deep dive like what I do. And I want to stop them from giving to those bad rescues because it hurts reputable rescues like All Dogs Come From Heaven, Williams, and there's some other great rescues out there that are working so hard to raise money and they're not getting it. And then you've got these other rescues like Rough House Rescue that stockpiles animals and allows a David Harary to house these animals, and then he just got busted again. So on that note, is there anything you want to add to that, Lisa, before William gives his presentation?
No, I'm good.
All right, thank you. William, let's go ahead, and on the screen is basically your beautiful logo where it says All Dogs Come From Heaven. William, you are the director. Lisa, you are the legal counsel. William, I know you have really great volunteers Do you have any other paid employees that work for the rescue?
We only have 2 paid employees, and they are both kennel workers. Nobody else makes any money at all.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about All Dogs Come from Heaven. The slide that you see here is Butler County, Ohio, 2017.
Oh, which case was that one, Lisa?
23 cats, 13 dogs, countless rabbits, guinea pigs, and chickens found alive.
Oh, Fairfield. Okay.
Yeah, that was before. That was right before me.
That was right before you. Fairfield was one of those horrific situations. The husband was a physical hoarder. The wife was an animal hoarder. In the backyard, protected by a privacy fence, was a large cemetery. Inside the house was almost impossible to even move through it. It had literally 16 ferrets, 7 giant rabbits. There was a chicken that was living on the stove, laying its eggs in the bathroom. The conditions were so bad that the woman's lungs became infected with mold, and she died on site. The husband ended up in the ICU. Now, in this case, I'm not sure I consider successful prosecution because he didn't go to jail, but he was deported because he was Australian. And they sent him out of the country and said he can never return to the U.S. again. But that was a very bad one. I mean, when it gets to the point where the people inside the home die because of the conditions themselves, needless to say, the animal conditions were horrific.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, here is Chance, approximately 18 years old, blind and deaf, found living in a crate with multiple dead and decomposing dogs.
Yes. And the funny thing, not the funny thing, actually the beautiful thing about it. Okay, Chance came in, obviously in incredibly poor condition. Body condition of 1 to 10, he was about a 2. I mean, to the point where you start thinking euthanasia is what is required here, or the dog's, well-being. And but he made an amazing recovery. He's just one of thousands that we've done this way. He is a little more, I don't know, emotionally bonded to us because his personality, regardless of what humans have done to him, regardless of how poor shape he was in, wonderful creature, absolutely forgiving, wonderful creature. Let's step to the next one. Sorry, I'll tear up. Ask Lisa, I actually do it. Oh, okay. LA County. Now, Lisa's going to watch me on what I say here because this has not been fully adjudicated yet. We have a trial coming up in August. What I can tell you is the conditions were horrific. We removed 18 because that was the initial phase to get evidence animals that were, really well inspected and verified and documented to provide an evidence chain. Because in many cases you can do this. You don't have to always take all 100 animals. If you take 10 of those animals, that you can prove the care of the animals is horrific. Now, you do take a vet through to see every other animal, and then they can testify to the conditions that they saw. You take the 10 worst, or in this case, the 18 worst, and what you do with that is you process them as evidence. And that supports total prosecution in the end, or at least that's always the intent. But let's face it, it's a jury trial. It only takes one person to not agree. So you don't always win these. Even when you do everything right, you don't always win it. But I do know this. If you don't do it right in the beginning, you're definitely going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe that's been over 3 years. That's May 2018, William?
That's
My gosh.
correct. We've been holding evidence animals for more than 3 years.
Wow.
But with no reimbursement from the state of Kentucky, we cover every penny of the cost. And that's why it's so hard to get people involved in some of these cases, depending on the state. Like in Ohio, we would be able to get a bonding statute type thing, and we can't do it here. Okay. Up here, you'll see on the top left, that is happy. Needless to say, from the second photograph next to her, the after, the before, demonstrably obvious, the after, hence she was known as happy.
Yeah, stop right there. Just wait. Stop. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Look at, okay, we're looking at the upper left-hand corner, folks. We're looking at, look at that. She's circling it. Thank you. Look at how you can tell that dog has not been cared for. He looks sad. And then no wonder the name Happy, William. Look at that smile. Look at that beautiful smile.
It was an amazing transformation. It took a fair amount of time, to be honest. I mean, it happened quickly. And below, you'll see Bailey.
Okay, and that's Bailey. Is that, he looks like
Bailey.
He's a little bit of a, what type of dog is he, would you say, William?
Basset. Basset.
Okay, adorable. Look at him.
Oh,
Look
no, the sweetest dog you've ever met in your entire life.
Oh, my gosh.
You'll see the before and afters on any of the Trixies. They got named after they came to us and were with us for a couple of weeks. Of course, on intake, we don't operate that way at all. The dogs are given a number because we have to be numerically correct in tracking it. And again, that's the chain of custody. We go so far as we have a separate area where we keep, like, say, Trixie animals, not your case. Mm-hmm. And we actually have sign-in blocks for anybody who signs into the room and signs out of the room.
Smart.
Did the dog eat today? Did the dog go to the bathroom today?
Okay, William, that's enough.
I told you she was going to do that.
Okay, so what we have on the screen right now, just hold that thought. I'm sorry, Jenny. Daisy, the face of change, Hamilton County SPCA, October 2018. Now, is this related? This is a different case entirely, or is this still Trixie?
Different case.
Totally different case.
Okay, can we talk about Daisy, please? Thank you.
It's not really a case per se. It's a movement. It was about getting the SPCA, which had been the dog warden and shelter service contract provider for Hamilton County, which is basically Cincinnati, Ohio, for the past 50 plus years. It was Daisy went in. We had gotten contact from somebody who took pictures of her and wanted us to go get her. But before we could go get her, the SPCA showed up and took her and held her as a stray. And the stray hold was 3 days. And so we had indicated to them and told them that we wanted her. We put a rescue hold on her if her owner didn't come. And so after the 3 days, when we went to get her, she came out near death because of the facilities and how they keep multiple dogs in their cages. In this, well, not just the stray hold, but at the time they're even adoptable dogs. I used to volunteer there, so I was very, very aware of the SPCA, which is why I started this kind of fight. And so Daisy had been attacked repeatedly by other dogs in the same kennel, and she was not treated during the time she was there. And when William picked her up, she was kind of just dragged out, and William given like a bag of some medicine, and that was it. And she was, we nearly lost her, and she was on IVs, et cetera, et cetera. So, but she ended up okay, and she survived, and she's a great dog, and we adopted her out. So it's a happy ending at the end, but the pictures of her show the horror that she went through. The first picture, the first picture on the left is the picture that was sent to us by the construction crew that saw her and said, "Hey, will you come and get her? There's this little friendly little pitty here, and she's wandering around." And but the SPCA, amazingly enough, who never responded to anything, actually got there first. And then the pictures on the right are her, scarring from being attacked. This was, I think, after the vet shaved her to get to.
Stop right there, yeah. So wait a minute. So you're saying that these injuries to the right that I'm looking at, Lisa and William, this happened while she was at the Hamilton County SPCA?
Yes.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
correct. She was
And
housed,
despite
she was housed with 3 other pit bulls.
Yeah, and despite she was there for 3 days and being fed supposedly in water, and everything that no, she never received any medical care while she was there. She was infected and barely. I don't even know if they broke it up or if they removed the dogs that attacked her or anything. But anyway, so this was just one of many issues that we had with the SPCA and its services, and the money it received from the county. So we started a movement with the commissioners, and started making public records requests, at which point they started hiding behind the fact that, yes, we do get money for the dog warden part, but then we're also a humane society / nonprofit. So we don't have to give you these records because those records pertain to us as humane officers, as a nonprofit, not as dog wardens, as the contract under the county. So they were doing, wordsmithing and trying to hide. And finally, I think they got somewhat sick of the negative publicity and the pressure we were putting on them with the county commissioners, and they ended up not seeking the next contract. So they are no longer the dog warden or the shelter provider in Hamilton County. It is now a thing called Cincinnati Care, which came from Claremont Care. Although I've just recently found out there's also some bad things going on with them. So we are going to start going to the commissioners about care. So
let me just stop you right. Oh, thank you, Jenny. I wanted to blow that up, and I don't know what the next slide is, but maybe it still has to pertain to Daisy. Let me see if it's anything else.
Looks like it's going to be something else.
I don't know for sure. Anything? Okay, maybe it's all blank from here. Let's go back to that Daisy collage. This really upsets me because here she is in a shelter. Okay, Lisa and William. She's in a shelter. Shelter means protection. I just got a call from an animal control officer, and I'm not going to tell you what state, and he left his position after 6 months because he did everything for the animal. He went above and beyond. If somebody was not following the law, he gave them a violation, which you should do, correct?
Yes.
Do your job.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's what you should do, but that's not what normally does occur. But you're
okay,
right.
and you're right, William. I'm going to get to that because I write this down and I keep it. And this poor guy was written up, and I know the county, and exactly what you said, Lisa. You've got to go after and write emails to the commissioners, the city mayor, the attorney. I don't care if you think you're being a nuisance because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And this infuriates me that sweet little Daisy, who was taken to a shelter, paid by taxpayers' dollars?
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. And this is what happens. And this is where I always keep this pinned to my external monitor. I feel that these people, whether they're in rescue, whether they're in shelters, they're using the backs of these animals, and they become, over time, emotionally detached, completely removed, and totally desensitized. Now think about that. Emotionally detached, completely removed, and totally desensitized. They look at these animals, the rescuers, the rogue rescuers, as just a means of money, and that just bothers me. But I'm hearing more and more about bad people that have infiltrated not only in the world of rescue, but also in the shelters where these animals are supposed to be protected. And on that note, let me just mention to you, and I was mentioning this to the producer who's not with us today, Kathy, is the fact that when I send out a blanket email, I blind copy, and it goes out to 3,800 not subscribers, just emails I've collected over the years. And I went on to the HSUS website, Humane Society of the United States, and I found the state directors, okay? Some of them have 2 states, so maybe there's 46 representatives, directors, call them what you want, for the states in this country. And I made a contact list, HSUS directors, and they're blind copied, and I send out a blanket email. Do you know that I keep a file of those that wish to unsubscribe? And you have that choice, and it says if you wish to unsubscribe. that I think 4 or 5, and I'm keeping a list, 4 or 5 of HSUS state directors have written back wishing to unsubscribe. Some of these people that are affiliated with shelters, and don't be fooled, folks, by Humane Society of such and such county, okay? Don't be fooled by that. That I had one that was from a Humane Society, I think in Columbus, Ohio. I'll go back and look.
Oh yeah, no, bad.
And she was, and you know what? They deserve to be shamed. She was like the rescue coordinator transport person. Wouldn't you want to know who the bad apples are in rescue? Wouldn't you want to keep a file on your computer or a hard copy of which rescues? I wouldn't want my animals out of my shelter to go to these bad people. And it's infuriating to me. The state director here in the state of Georgia, her name is Deborah Berger. I've met her. She's been at the conference, Animal Law Source. She was at an exhibit 3 years ago where she fell asleep at her exhibit. I was a pharmaceutical rep. If I fell asleep at my exhibit, I'd be fired. Oh, the excuse was she wasn't feeling well. I'm like, really? Then you go to your hotel room.
Right.
And she knows the horrific conditions that our own Department of Ag, the Companion Animal Equine Division, which I talked about earlier, is turning a blind eye and a deaf ear. If you're an inspector and you go on a property with numerous complaints, wouldn't you think, Lisa and William, that those 2 inspectors would step into one of the kennels and examine that dog's ears, do an assessment? I had to ask the Inspector General, who has no clue, and he's admitted he has no clue about companion animals. He's the Inspector General for our Department of Ag, Commissioner Gary Black. He loves his cows. He's another one that's not a fan of domestic animals. Then you got Mark Murrow, who is the Companion Animal Equine Division Director. And he came under a lot of fire that first quarter of 2019, folks, where I was boots on the ground on one case. But the first quarter wasn't even over yet. And we had over 1,200 dogs extracted and seized from 3 licensed breeders. So what are these damn inspectors doing? They're going in my opinion, they're turning a blind eye and a deaf ear, and maybe their palm is being stretched out there. It is disgusting. I was at a meeting in May of 2019 regarding this. They just don't care. They give you a song and dance, and they all sat around this table singing Kumbaya, okay? And now we have a binder, 3 binders that Inspector Gary Kelly told me that he has, who works for Commissioner Gary Black. 3 binders he has of complaints that I fed him of consumers that have adopted dogs from this rogue rescue down near Savannah, Georgia. And she's still operating, and even the own county won't even go near her. Oh, stay away. Oh, you're going to stay away while she continues to neglect animals? And then her main guy that's on there, he's been arrested for battery charges. So this is the type of people. Scum attracts scum, and liars stick with liars. And that I will hold true. I mean, I will stick by that. And I will tell you one thing I will say, and I have to say that PETA came to my aid. And we had one representative from PETA that wrote a letter to the commissioner, Gary Black. And Mark Murrow responded back with the typical BS. I'm sick and tired of this, people, and I need you to be sick and tired. And I need you to be that someone to help fight the cause. These animals are suffering. Don't be scared by their bully tactics. Don't be afraid of the harassment, the intimidation, because they can't just pick on you. We are power in numbers, and we need to fight for these animals. And Lisa, I thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And William, I thank you so much for what you're doing. But this show can go on for hours. We've got to fight. Oh, thank you, Margaret. Thank you. Margaret, your lovely wife, William, just emailed the remaining slides to Kathy. But Kathy, the producer, is off, so we probably won't get to them today. Sadly, sorry, but thank you, Margaret. I know that
if you don't mind, there's a couple of things we need to acknowledge because they're actually kind of very important. We have to remember sometimes in rural communities, such as Grundy, Tennessee, as an example, okay, that county does not even have a shelter. But that didn't mean that the sheriff didn't want the problem to end. And what they need to know is there are ways to make that problem end, even though they do not have the resources, the capacity, the experience or anything else to accomplish that task. That doesn't mean some of them don't want to do it. Some of them do. You just can't. And that's why they have to reach people like us. Because we bring the resource capacity, the ability to effectuate a change that they may have already wanted. We know for a fact that the local community wanted it because they started driving by because they heard what was going on, and they were literally, I mean, nobody was out there physically cheering, but essentially that's what it was. I mean, so sometimes it's not that law enforcement doesn't want to do it, they simply do not have the capacity to do it. But that doesn't excuse them for not reaching out and finding that capacity, such as ourselves. Okay? And we're not the only game in town. I'm not trying to tout us as being the only. But the point being is that if we do need to make an effort on our own part to make sure we talk about the resources, we talk about the need. Okay, but those are two separate things. We need to draw a line between the two. And that means communication. And if it is like to rural counties of Tennessee, West Virginia, Ohio, Eastern Ohio, whomever it is, we have to be better about communicating, saying, you do have the resources, you just don't have them in your county. And you also have to have one more thing. You got to be very careful on politics, because I got shut down on one operation simply because that state didn't want to rescue from another state to come in and save their butts. And that came from somewhere high up in politics and shut it down. That didn't mean the locals didn't want it done, but it sure didn't mean I didn't show up.
Well, that's sad, because the animals are the ones that suffer. And that's very sad. I do want to go back to when we were talking about the Trixie Foundation and that gentleman, I don't want to call him a gentleman, that guy's name is Randy Skaggs, horrible human being, in my opinion, and I'm going to state it. That's how I feel. But I do have to say, William, that it was due to Julia Sharp that contacted you, and I'll remember that conversation that you shared with me, that you called her, and she didn't believe you. And you said to her, give me 2 days or 3 days. Julia Sharp has been fighting this fight pretty much alone for, 10, 15 years against Randy Skaggs? I mean, she's been... About 15 years. And she was the one that would not give up on those animals. And William reached out to her and said, I'm going to help you. And she said, sure you are. She lost all faith in humanity. William, touch on that story, because that's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's actually, there were two people in rescue from Central Kentucky that knew of Julia Sharp and knew of the fight that was going on. I was not aware of that. But one of them contacted me, and then the second one, I think they spoke together about it, and said, can you please call this lady? So I did. I asked her to send me something, anything that I can use as evidentiary, in the sense that for my own internal measurement to say, okay, we're going to get into the fight. And she did. It was extremely compelling, to be perfectly frank with you, extremely compelling. And it definitely we started working. We worked with the prosecutor, who has unfortunately since did not win re-election. And he was doing exactly the right thing. He wanted this gone too. He really did. And basically, short answer is, we formed the teams, formed the rescues, we get a warrant, and then we're on site and we go to town. I mean, can it always happen that easily? No. And am I oversimplifying what it took to make this happen? Absolutely, I am. But the point is, the resource does exist. We just need to let people know that it does.
William, but do you remember when you called her and you said, I'm going to get back to you, I don't know what the time frame was, it 2 days or 3 days, and she doubted you, and then you called her back. She couldn't believe it, because she had reached out to everybody. And I can sympathize and empathize with her, because I know that there's a team that's trying to shut Rough House Rescue down. I've helped, but there's a team that's, nonstop. And it's so sad, because from Texas to Kentucky to Long Island, the state, local, and even federal agencies, they all do the name blame game. Okay,
Yes.
the name blame. Oh, it's not our department. It's this department. It's not our department. It's like, stop. They just don't care, and we've got to get that caring, compassion in the ones that can make the difference for the animals.
No, you're right. I mean, when I first contacted Julia, it was obvious by the end of the initial phone call that she never thought she would hear from me again. She really thought that all dogs come from heaven. Who's this little podunk rescue up in Ohio? They're not going to do this. So when we received the warrant, I called her, and she just started bawling, literally bawling on the phone, because she couldn't believe that someone was actually going to come down and do stuff. But Lisa was on site at that location. I mean, from moment one. You know, we all went down there, got hotels the night before. But we're not playing. When it's a serious case like that, we're not kidding. When we say we're showing up, we're showing up. And that's what we need more of in rescue and, by the way, in our government agencies is, please don't give me platitudes. If you're not going to do anything, just say you're not.
Right.
Okay? And
Right.
let me move on to the next thing. But if you say you're going to, do it. It's that simple.
Yes.
It really truly is.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I just got word from the producer that we do have to discuss last thoughts, last comments, any concerns. What do you want to share with our audience? Lisa, I'll start with you first.
Well, I guess since a lot of people adopted dogs over the with COVID, my concern is that now that people are going back to business as usual, that we're going to have an influx of dogs back at the shelters, or dogs as strays, or dogs just left, or worse. And there is an influx and an increase in fake rescues of people who are hoarders, who have decided, well, I'm going to create this nonprofit so I can make money while I'm doing what I want to do anyway. And then there's the actual nonprofits who are just in it for the money, and who could care less about the animals. And those are the things we're finding more and more, as opposed to handling hoarding situations or criminal situations per se. We're handling hoarders turn nonprofit, or nonprofits that aren't really nonprofit rescues, and who are not taking care of the animals, and that people have finally, there's enough backlash over time that finally some straw breaks and something happens. But it's not good, and I don't think it's going to get any better. And until this legislature starts allowing within criminal charges to allow for restitution for those who help, we're going to have a problem, because we small rescues can't afford to keep doing this. And when you don't have a shelter who's going to do it, you don't have animal control who's going to do it, or you don't have a county with an animal shelter who can hold the animals, there's not going to be a solution, and it's going to be a problem that continues.
Mm-hmm. Well said, and so true. Very sad. William, anything you want to say? Last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yes. Anybody in the rescue world that gets into any situation, whether it's a seizure operation or a surrender operation, anything of the type, do yourself a favor and spend some time on the legal side. You really have to protect yourselves. And if it's a criminal case, you have to keep the ability for that case to move forward. And that is your responsibility. It's not the cop's responsibility, it's yours. So whatever you do, learn. Hire an attorney if you have to, or recruit one. I mean, whatever it takes.
Call me.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be doing this right. If you're not going to do it right, don't bother.
Right. Well said.
Just don't bother.
So on that note, we're going to close here. I can't thank you both enough. Lisa, for your time. It's so good to see you. And
See
William,
you too.
thank you so much. And William, thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep up the great work. I can't go without thanking Picture a Moment Pep Productions for putting on the show. We do have one scheduled again 2 weeks from now, which is July 14th. We're already into July. Come tomorrow, scary. But every 2 weeks. And I'll tell you, we could do a show every day because there's so much out there that we need to get out into the general public. And on that note, just save the date, July 14th, same time. And maybe, William, we can bring in Sheriff Ivey that day, and maybe the one psychiatrist, we can talk about hoarding situations. And we've just got to keep being the voice for the voiceless. And in that note, I thank you all so much. Lisa, again, thank you. And William, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a good day.